I mean, in terms of AI in the workplace, and from a HR perspective, obviously we've touched on the recruitment. It's a big part of it. It's somewhere where it can be really useful, as long as you do it in the right way. I'll touch on that again in a minute. But for me, what I'm finding is that there are sort of two main categories of the risks from an employment law and a HR perspective. The first is what your employees are doing day to day and how they're using AI. And the second is when something goes wrong, or you have a disgruntled employee, them using AI against you. And that's, okay, staff have a right to bring grievances and then, make subject access requests and all of that sort of stuff. But as I said earlier, you only get what you put in. And if you go into it biased, as employees often will, if they're feeling aggrieved, they're going to put in a very emotionally driven prompt, and they're going to get something out that's reflective of that. And unfortunately, a lot of people do take what they get out of AI as gospel, and they will sort of go, okay, well, AI said I am entitled to X, Y, and Z. And so they then laser focus on it instead of then going and speaking to somebody, speaking to an advisor or whatever, and getting a bit more of a reality check. So what you find is sometimes you have these employees who are on a rampage because they've read something on ChatGPT that says they can do X, Y, and Z, and there's no telling them that they're wrong, and it's how you manage that. And then we do find that. In fact, today, before this call, I had a phone call with someone where we had just that, and it was very obvious that it was AI generated because of the formatting, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But it was very obvious, and there was nothing wrong in terms of what they were asking for, but it just kind of missed the point a little bit, and it was very clear that that was because what they'd put into AI wasn't great. So that is a big thing at the moment in terms of tribunal claims. A report in September last year said that they were finding that up to 32% rise in caseload for the tribunals because of AI generated grievance and tribunal claims. So actually people getting them to write the grievances, getting them to write the particulars of claim, they'd actually seen a 32% rise in caseload. That was at ACAS and tribunal. And 42% on disability discrimination in particular, where they'd been AI red flagged as being a contributor, which on the one hand potentially is access to justice for people. But again, it comes down to, well, are they putting in the right stuff to get something decent out? And ultimately, we then have to do a response to this stuff in a way that, is meaningful without saying this is a load of rubbish because AI has produced it. So that's the one side. It's creating backlogs in the tribunals, and it's creating more work for HR teams having to deal with these grievances that have been produced by AI. They might miss the point slightly. It is creating more work. Same with data subject access requests. Maybe people wouldn't have necessarily done that if they'd not been prompted by AI. And I'm sure most of the people on this call have come across a subject access request at some point and know just how much of a drain on resources those things are to have to deal with. So that stuff is becoming more prevalent because people are asking AI, they are getting answers, and then they very often will prompt and say, you're entitled to it. Would you like me to draft the letter for you? Yes, please. And then they get a letter, but then they don't check it, and they just send it, and then you've got to then deal with it, and it is creating a massive drain on resources. The other thing is